from Trump's decision to federalize National Guard troops and send them in to respond to the LA protests over his immigration raids. CNN's Harry Enton running the numbers on this one for you this morning. So overall, how have what we've seen in the last days, but also the last few weeks, have ramped up immigration crackdowns, these raids that we've seen in California and beyond, and the protests in response? How's it impacting his approval?
Yeah, I think the simple word here is hurt. It has hurt Donald Trump's popularity. You can see it right here. We have two new polls, Quinnipiac University, AP Newark. I got the prior poll for you on the screen. I got the now. This is the net approval rating. You can see this in Quinnipiac, -12 to -16. How about AP Newark? -16 to -21. Awful, awful, awful for both of these pollsters. Where we are right now, both Quinnipiac and AP Newark, the worst for Donald Trump in this term so far. He is very much way underwater, at least in these two polls.
And this is overall approval. How about specifically on immigration?
Yeah, so immigration has been a strength for Donald Trump. That was why in the beginning of the week I said that Donald Trump wanted this fight. Maybe he shouldn't have wanted this fight. What are we talking about here? Let's take a look at the net approval rating for Donald Trump on immigration. You go back to June 1, he was at +4 points. Look at where he is now, -2 points in the aggregate. That is a drop of 6 points in only about 2 weeks' time. The only thing that's happened over the last 2 weeks is obviously Donald Trump's ramped up immigration hawkish agenda. And at least at this particular point, the American people are saying, no, we do not like that. And they have turned against the president on his core strength issue of immigration. He is now underwater on the issue that has been strongest for him.
Donald Trump is now underwater on each and every policy point of his entire administration, as Americans across the country are more and more so tuning into the absolute chaos and disorder of the Trump administration, and they are not liking what they are seeing. Now, you had Harry Enton break down the numbers there that are absolutely astounding, considering how strong Trump was on his most key central policy that he has in his immigration policy, where just a couple weeks ago, the majority of Americans were on Trump's side when it came to his immigration policy. But what we see now is that is not the case. And with what went down yesterday with Alex Padilla being forcibly detained while trying to ask the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, a question, I can't imagine any of this is going to get any better for Trump whatsoever. So before we look at everything, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and share with someone that's into politics. So you had Enton point out there that these two polls prior Trump's worst net approval rating up until this point was -12 from Quinnipiac and -16 from AP. And now it's at -16 on Quinnipiac and -21 from AP. So it appears that the more people look at what's going down in this administration, they are not liking it. And it appears that Donald Trump himself is already sort of acknowledging some of this backlash against his most key policy point that he has in this Truth Social post that I'll show you guys here. But first, we'll look at this article from Mediaite. It says, judge rules Trump's deployment of National Guard in California illegal. A federal judge in California ruled on Thursday that President Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard in the state to quell protests is illegal. U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer said that the unrest in L.A. falls far short of rebellion. While defendants have pointed to several instances of violence, they have not identified a violent, armed, organized, open, and avowed uprising against the government as a whole, he wrote. The definition of rebellion is unmet. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals granted the Trump administration an administrative stay of the district court decision, allowing the president to keep the National Guard deployed while a 3-judge panel considers the case. So tons and tons of people are looking at the deployment of the National Guard in LA, and it very much so is not going the way that Trump was hoping that it would go. And people are seeing this as a massive, massive overreach of his administration's power. And when Trump keeps saying, we're going to deport all of the worst criminals that are in our country, and it's just going to be the worst of the worst that are leaving, it seems like a lot of people were willing to go along with that, or at least trust or hope the president was going to fulfill that promise. But what are we seeing? We're seeing people with non-violent offenses be deported and apprehended at places such as Home Depot, at places such as places of worship, as well as even customs and enforcement hearings where people are being detained at their hearings that they're being told to go to by the government. So that's not the worst of the worst that we're deporting. And the ramifications that are being sent through communities across the country, the consequences of these needless deportations is sending shockwaves throughout communities across the country, and people are reacting. So here we have Trump posting on Truth Social a very strange post. He says, our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good, long-time workers away from them, with those jobs being almost impossible to replace. In many cases, the criminals allowed into our country by the very stupid Biden open borders policy are applying for these jobs. This is not good. We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the USA. Changes are coming. So Trump is essentially admitting here, maybe some of these guys that we're deporting, they're not the worst of the worst. They're longtime workers who companies have come to depend on, right? MAGA voters, Republican, deep red state voters who have come to depend on the labor of immigrants coming here to allow their businesses to run. And we've seen lots and lots of MAGA regret in terms of these people speaking out about their displeasure of having their workers be taken away from them. Just go and look it up in the news. I saw 2 or 3 different instances of that over this last week. And, he can't blame everything on Biden for forever. Like, he's trying to say here, it's Biden that allowed the criminals to come into our country, and they're applying for the jobs that have been vacated by my immigration policy. Well, Trump, you're essentially admitting here that you're going back on the whole, we're only going to get the worst of the worst out of our country. And it definitely seems like, the last word here, he says, changes are coming. Changes are coming to what? To his immigration policy? Is Trump now basically capitulating on his hardline immigration stance already? Is he looking at some of these numbers and doing the math of the midterms and realizing that the American people are not down with this? And again, this is Trump's strongest point. His strongest policy measure that he has is immigration. So when you go over to any other policy issue, when you look at tariffs, when you look at his stance on the war in Ukraine, when you look at his policy of the big beautiful bill, cutting out Medicaid from potentially millions and millions of Americans set to lose coverage because of the big beautiful bill. giving tax breaks to the richest in our country. He's even less popular on that stuff. So, we're at a moment here where is this political pressure enough for the administration to majorly change course on their policy? I believe that it is. I believe that these are signs that the systems are holding up. The wheels are still rolling on democracy, and Trump just doesn't get his way in each and every instance. And people voicing their displeasure with the administration has a tangible effect. And I want to now mention this military parade that is set to happen tomorrow. And I want to show you the statistics of that real quick that Harry Enton has here.
A bit of a turn, but it is happening this weekend. This weekend is the big military parade that the president, we know, has been pushing for and is getting this time to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. There's been a lot of back and forth about concerns over cost and simply how much the hardware and military tanks are going to weigh, and could they damage even the roads. But still, it's moving ahead. But how are people feeling about it?
Yeah, if immigration has not helped Donald Trump, maybe he wants to change the subject to this military parade. But take a look here. Government funds for the military parade, a good use of funds? Only 38% say yes, it is a good use of funds. How about not a good use? 60% say not a good use of funds. And get this, in the center of the electorate, among independents, just 24% of independents say it is a good use of funds. This has simply been one of the worst polling weeks for Donald Trump that we've seen. You really only saw worse numbers around his 100th day. But at this particular point, Donald Trump is much more towards the trough of his popularity than the crest of it.
60% of people think that using funds to have this military parade is a complete and utter waste of money. 60%. You don't get 60% of Americans agreeing on hardly anything, but it seems like Trump is able to bring Americans together in disapproving of his administration in new ways. And, it seems like Trump's trying to basically kind of take the attention away from some of this backlash against his immigration policy and backlash against tariffs, and give himself a big old pat on his back on his birthday and have this military parade. And he wants people to feel patriotic in doing so, but it simply isn't working. And just yesterday, Senator Alex Padilla was forcefully detained while trying to ask Kristi Noem a question at a Department of Homeland Security briefing. And these numbers here that we're seeing, this is all prior to that, right? I can't imagine that there are many Americans that are looking at what happened with Alex Padilla being detained and are jumping up and down with joy, because you don't have the Trump administration ruling with an iron fist in this case either. They're not saying, oh, yeah, puffing their chest out and going, yeah, we'll do that to any senator that has any questions to ask to Kristi Noem about immigration whatsoever. No, that's not what they're saying. They're saying, oops, we didn't know who that guy was, and that we thought that was some nobody, some security threat guy, which is a total and complete bold-faced lie, because Alex Padilla came into that building with law enforcement, and in the video that you can go and watch, he identifies himself as a senator while he's being detained. So it seems like the Trump administration is backtracking on that as well, where they're trying to somehow convince the American people that they didn't know who this guy was, and it was some sort of mistake or miscommunication. Why what happened. But it seems like more so that the Trump administration is getting high on its own supply and is taking these brazen actions without really thinking ahead as to how people are going to react, and then looking at that reaction and trying to do revisionist history about why they took that action. And to me, these are really the first sort of major cracks that we have seen in Trump's administration. And these cracks are cracks that could grow into huge fractures, right? If the American people are to keep up the momentum of protesting and voicing their displeasure, and if these polls keep coming out that show Trump is underwater on each and every issue, it seems like we do still have power to influence this administration, and they're recognizing that they are not all powerful, and they do still have to, in fact, win elections. And the current trajectory of the administration is not going to be winning very many elections in the midterms coming up here. So yeah, I mean, you got Speaker Mike Johnson, right, who's calling for Alex Padilla's censure. But the thing is that Mike Johnson is likely not going to be the Speaker of the House much longer at this rate. So just how much are the American people tuned into what Speaker Mike Johnson says and thinks, right? Not very much so, it seems. So we'll see how this develops in the next upcoming weeks here. Been a very busy news week. Lots of stuff going down. Appreciate you guys checking out the video. And please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.